So, sorry, yeah? Cool. So, hello, my name is Vikrant. I am a fourth year comms engineering student, and I have a lot of OCD. Like, whenever I see code, I need it to be clean, I need it to be maintainable. What do I mean by clean? I'll explain it later. So, the slides मैंने पहले से share कर दी है. So, in case you want to refer back to the slides or if you want to refer to the code, you can see the WhatsApp group, and I've sent you the link as well. So when I say that I have OCD in terms of the clean code, this is what I mean. So here is a very simple C code that you might have studied in data structures. What it does is, given a binary tree, it traverses the binary tree in order direction, and it calculates the sum of each and every value in the tree. Now, I don't know कितने लोग यहाँ पे SCs है, कितने लोग यहाँ पे TEs है. Is there a count somewhere, Yashodhan?
No, ऐसा individual count नहीं है अभी.
Okay, so if SCs don't know what this is, in simple ways, I'll explain it to you. Ki, given a data structure like an array, what this code does is it traverses the array and it prints each and every value, and it finds the sum of the elements in the array. Now, when you look at the code, okay, there are a few things which are terrible about this code. The first is there's a variable which is declared outside. So if you have studied SPA or if you have studied OOP or any other language, you might have written such a code where there was a variable which is outside all the functions. So this is what we call a global state. Then the function which I have told you about, क्या करता है कि it traverses the array and then it finds the sum of each and every element. But then there's a little bit of printf statement over here. Now, if I give this code to my friend and I tell him to execute it, he might be thinking, why the hell is this function printing something? So this effect, the printing effect, even though the function is for summing up the elements, is called a side effect of a function. And even if you have worked on many projects, you might have written functions which have such side effects. For example, अगर कुछ algorithm लिखा है तो बीच में if you printf or you print something, that thing is called a side effect. And in bigger projects, it's definitely wrong to include side effects in functions. Lastly, there is this thing over here. In order to call this function, I need to set the global variable integer sum as 0. Now let's say that I have 4 or 5 binary trees or 4 or 5 arrays. If I want to call this function for multiple arrays in the same program, then I cannot parallelize it. Parallelize matlab you might have heard about dual core and quad core processors. Hello?
Vikrant, you can unmute.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I talk about parallelization, that means this piece of code, I want to run it on 2 different processors or 2 different computers or 2 different, execution pipelines. Like I want to run this code twice at the same time. At that time, they are sharing this variable. And if one of the processes will change this variable, the other process will get affected. So in simple terms, I cannot run this code simultaneously on 2 different processors. So this is really bad because when you go in the future, when you go into a company, you need to work with such optimizations. Like you need to write algorithms which can work across multiple processors or multiple computers. Okay. So that is why this piece of code is terrible. And this is what you might have learned in your semester 2 a structural programming approach. The next that you might be learning or which you have learned is object-oriented approach, where you write a class and then you define the functions inside the class. Maybe there's a problem. This is a Python code which I've written. This was a C code. That here there's a yell function for the class animal. what it's doing is it's printing something, and then it is raising an exception. Exception handling in Python, exception handling in Java. Even if you know either of those, it's fine. So this exception is a terrible side effect. Why I'm saying it's terrible? Because when you encounter an exception, your entire program can crash. And when you're writing code, let's say there is WhatsApp. If there is an error which happens in WhatsApp, the WhatsApp process cannot crash. So in the future, you will need to write programs which are resistant to crashes. And object-oriented programming approach will definitely not help you write such code, which maybe it restarts itself or it handles a crash on its own. So the important takeaway is side effects in functions, where if your function is suppose summation of all the elements in the array, then your function should not print each and every element in the array, or it should not change a variable which is outside its function. So these are the common problems which I have heard from my friends and my colleagues in internships. The first is messed up logic. So basically, if I give them a function, let's say this one, which sums up all the elements in the array, they might be thinking, where the hell is a variable defined? Like ये some variable कोई और file में defined है and यहाँ पे ये use कर रहा है. So that is not a good logic. The second is, why is the function printing this thing? So these side effects may confuse somebody else. Okay, let's say you give a piece of code to your boss or your senior in an internship or a company. They might be thinking, why is your code printing something, doing something which it is not supposed to? So this is really bad logic which you're including in your functions. The third is, how do I add a new feature? So let's say this function is printing all the elements, but let's say I don't want to, like it is summing up all the elements of an array or a binary tree. But let's say I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to double each and every element of the array. I cannot modify this function easily. So this is where structured programming and object-oriented programming fail, where adding new features is very, very tedious. Then sometimes people copy paste the same function. Like ये एक function है, इसको copy paste करके मैंने दूसरा function बनाया, and then I change 1 or 2 lines of code. So if you have a 100-line function, you make another function which is also 100 lines, and then you change 2 or 3 lines of code. It doesn't make sense. You can just share the logic between those two functions. What is the input and output of the function? So if you have worked with Python or JavaScript, there are no type definitions. Okay. So for example, in this function, define yell, I'm assuming that a variable is set called the animal ka name. If the variable is not set, then it is throwing an error. This is very complicated. Like why do you want the variable to be set? The function ka call definition mein nahi bata raha. I can just call this function as .yell. Fourth is multiprocessing. So right now you don't need to know about this much, but if you have worked with threading in SPA or threading in Java, then you will realize how difficult it is to use this code in a different thread. And the final question that I get from my colleagues in internships is, I don't know how to solve this problem. If you write a bunch of code in a sequential manner, and then you don't know how to edit the code again the next day. So that is when your mind goes blank. मैं अभी logic कैसे लिखूं? So these are the problems which we regularly encounter with structural programming and object-oriented programming. And we as juniors, like we are all engineering students, and we go to a company, and these are the common logical errors that we encounter in our own code. And this is when the scalability and maintainability. Scalability means how you can scale up, like you can add new features, or you can maybe adjust the application for multiple users or something like that. And maintainability means if you go back to the code 1 year later, then you will actually recognize each and every function or each and every line of code which is written in your project. And these are all the problems which you will encounter in a badly written program or a terribly written project, which will ultimately cause frustration. So what you don't know is you can divide each and every step of your algorithm into one function. So don't let this code trouble you a lot. This is Haskell. I will teach you, I will give you an introduction at the end of the session. So in basic terms, what it is doing is, this is the same function which I wrote over here. This 10 line ka function is now a 3 line ka function. Okay. So this function, then I'm using it in a sum function. So what it is doing is, sum3 uses the in-order function, and then it sums up all the elements of the array. So in-order is a function which takes a binary tree and returns the array of each and every element in the tree. And then the sum3 function takes a tree, and then it will return the sum. So this is similar to mathematics. So if you have paid attention in maths in SEM 1 and SEM 2, I did not. H is equals to f dot g. This is called function composition. And this feature is actually available in most of the programming languages. You can basically write h of x is a function which calls f on g of x. So this is actually a mathematical way of writing programs and algorithms. And I'm focusing on this in-order function because, like I said, the previous in-order function was summing up all the elements and it was printing as well. That was a side effect. There are no side effects in this function. It is not printing anything. It is not summing up anything. If I want to sum up something, then I am defining a new function for summing up, the sum3 function. And if I want to double each and every element, then I am defining a new function called double3. Then there's a print3 function which I can use to print each and every element in the array or the data structure. So this is the advantage of functional programming, where you can divide each and every part of your algorithm into small units of functions. So a basic principles which I want to introduce you to this is functions are first class. What that means is, in the same way that you pass integers to, let's say, a function, or you pass data to some as arguments, you can actually pass functions to other functions. Okay, so this is the main basis of functional programming. So functions can be passed and used as data. So here's a little bit of Python code which you might not have seen before. There's a function called get multiplier. That is, it takes an integer n and it makes a function called mulf. So what it is doing is, given an integer n and given another integer a, it is multiplying both the integers. But you can actually modify this function and you can dynamically create as many functions as you want in the future. So if this example is not clear to you, here's a simple example. I have an array and I have a for loop which computes the summation of 2 raised to x. So if I say 1, 2, 3, so what it is doing is 2 raised to 1 plus 2 raised to 2 plus 2 raised to 3. And this if statement, it tells me that it is doing this only for the even numbers. Okay, so there you go. So 2 raised to 2 plus 2 raised to 4 plus 2 raised to 6 plus 2 raised to 8 plus 2 raised to 10. When you look at this code, it doesn't make sense to you at first glance. Okay, but when you convert it into functional programming, here's a much simpler program. Given the array, what I'm doing is I'm directly assigning the sum. You happy I declared the sum and then I'm manipulating sum over here. Sum is equal to sum plus t. Here I'm directly defining sum as array and filtering the array. So x is equals to x. This code, what it does is x modulus 2. That means all the even integers. So I'm filtering the array to get all the even integers. Then I'm mapping all the even integers to 2 raised to x. So 2 raised to 2, 2 raised to 4, 2 raised to 6. Then I'm reducing the array. So from an array of integers, I'm reducing it to one integer itself using this function called dot reduce. A comma b equals to a plus b. So this is a summation function. In the end, this 3 lines of code is the same as this for loop, this if statement, this manipulation, all in one. So you can see that this JavaScript code that I've written, you can actually use this in your projects in the future. that instead of writing custom logic like this, you can write simpler logic like this. And when you give it to, let's say, your Unicode mentor or your internship boss or your internship mentor, they will understand your code in 1 second. So that is why I really like functional programming, is because it's easier to read, it's easier to understand, it's easier to just give it to somebody, and it just works. So each and every part of your code is modular. I can remove this function, the filter function, and this will still work. I can remove this map function, and it will still work. I can remove this reduce function, and it will give me an array. So each and every part of this is modular. I can even change this over here, and the function will give, and the sum will have a different value. Compare that to here in this program, I have to really read each and every line of code and understand कि ये block क्या कर रहा है, ये if statement क्या कर रहा है, ये for loop क्या कर रहा है. And in the end, if I visit this code the next day, if I read this code maybe after a month, I will not understand it probably. So each and every function in your each and every part of your algorithm is modular. And you can even create, so all these functions like .filter, .map, .reduce are built into the languages. But you can create your own functions. Like if you're doing, let's say, machine learning, you can create a small function called run YOLO. And instead of map X, I can say map to YOLO. So what it will do is it will automatically just run YOLO on each and every element of the array. Is valid or run VGG16. So you can just create small portions of your code and then mix and match the code to make a bigger project. That is the power of functional programming that I want to focus on. And many of the languages that you may know already have functional programming built into them. For example, Java. So Java 8 has functional programming built into it. Python has functional programming built way before Java. JavaScript and TypeScript are very much, constructed on top of functional programming. Even C++, like people don't know about it, but C++ has functional programming as well. One second. So things you should know. So before you start converting your code into a functional programming approach, you should know about these few points. The first one being a function should take an input and give an output. What this means is you should not declare global variables and manipulate the global variables in your function. Okay, so like in the first example which I showed you, the sum one. So this is a global variable and your function should not be dependent on it. The second is try to avoid exception handling. So if you know Java, then you may know exceptions, and exception handling is a very big headache. So the main saying of my bosses was "fatne de." So what I mean by that is, if your function is crashing, let it crash. Let your program crash. You can handle it in the later block. The next thing is map, filter, and reduce. So these three functions are built into a lot of programming languages right now. So Python, JavaScript, Java, all of these have these three functions. What map does is it converts. So let me show you. Okay, niche. So here is a small function, the same function which I wrote in JavaScript before. So what map does is it converts one element into other element. So what I'm doing is I'm mapping an integer to 2 raised to that integer. Okay. The second is filter. What filter does is given an array and given a condition, let's say even. So I am filtering out the elements such that I only get the even elements, or I am filtering out the elements such that I only get the odd elements. And the last function is reduce. So what reduce does is given an array and given a logic, let's say a comma b equals to a plus b. So it will apply this logic to the first and the second, then the second and the third, then the third and the fourth. It will apply this logic to each and every element in the array in a sliding window type of system. And the code that you see over here is a very standard functional programming code. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm defining a few modular functions. Even is a modular function, odd is a modular function. And then this is a big function where I'm using even, odd, map, filter, and reduce. And together they make my program. And if you think that you cannot actually convert your old program into a new program, like because you maybe map or filter reduce don't work for your project, there are languages which have no for loops, no while loops, no if statements, and you can easily create programs in those languages. So there's no excuse for not using map, filter, and reduce. And the other things is, of course, avoid global state and avoid side effects. A few examples that I want to give you is Twitter. So Twitter is built on Scala, and Scala is a functional programming language. So it's based on Java actually. Then there's Facebook, and Facebook has created their own language called ReasonML. So you can actually search for it. It's called ReasonML, and you can learn it on your own. If you are interested in data science, then there is Google MapReduce, or there's Hadoop MapReduce, and there's Apache Spark. So if you are actually interested in machine learning and data science, then you will have to learn either of these technologies, and in there you will be learning functional programming. And finally, if you have a little bit of experience in machine learning, either in Keras or PyTorch, then even PyTorch and Keras have a functional API. So looking at this little program that I'll show you. So this is a model which is written in PyTorch. So what I'm doing is I'm applying ReLU activation. I'm applying ReLU activation twice to the same input. So if you look at this program now, it satisfies all the conditions. It is not dependent on any global state. It does not have any side effects because it is not printing anything or doing something which it is not supposed to. And it is applying for a given input, it is applying a series of transformations, and then it is returning an output. So what you might be learning in machine learning, maybe in IBM ka course, I don't know how good it is. Maybe if you're learning it in machine learning or anything, then you are kind of learning functional programming, because without functional programming, the tools that we're using for machine learning would not have been possible at all. The second is Apache Spark. So this is a little bit of example. This is in Python actually. So counts. What it does is it counts each and every word in a text file. So given a text file, there's a flat math function which basically runs over all the elements. Then there's a map function which also runs over all the elements. And then there's a reduce function which, given an array, it will reduce it to one single, what do you say, data structure, or one single value. So if you think that functional programming is not useful in day-to-day life, then in your usual projects, it is actually very useful, and many of the projects would not have been possible without it. And the final example I want to give you is OpenCV Python. So before I go into that, I've written the code actually. So if anybody has any doubts, then you can ask it right now. You can unmute and ask it. Achha, okay. So here's the code example which I wanted to show you. If you Google any tutorial online for OpenCV, you will find this huge code. Okay, there's a while loop, there's a cap, there is something which is happening. And if you read this code, you won't be able to understand without any explanation. So I've seen this, like when I was in second year, I used to Google a lot of OpenCV tutorials, and udhar I used to not understand anything. One second. I used to not understand anything. So because though they don't actually write their code in functions, they just write it in one long piece of program. Instead, what I want to show you is how I can convert this code into a functional programming approach. In the main loop, what I'm doing is, I'll just zoom in. Yeah. In the main loop, what I'm doing is, for each and every image in genFrames is a function, and grayscaling that image. Then I'm getting the faces. Then for each and every face, I'm drawing a rectangle. Then I'm getting the region of interest. So I'm focusing on the faces. I'm taking in the image and I'm focusing on the faces in that image. I'm finding the smiles in each and every face. Then I'm drawing a rectangle for each and every smile. Then I'm getting the eyes from each and every face, and then I'm drawing the rectangles on each and every, and then showing that image which I've drawn. So let me just run this program and show you. My laptop, I won't actually be able to run the program because it's a very old laptop, but take care. Let's see if it runs. Let it run in the background. So till then I explain the code. So the first thing I'm doing is loading the hair cascades. So even if you don't understand this code, consider this as a model that you will be using for you will be using on the images. Then what I'm doing is, oh, it ran. Then what I'm doing is, given a source, I'm getting all the images in that video frame, and then I'm yielding. So this is called a generator. Even if you don't understand what a generator is, consider it like an array where you don't know the values, but as soon as you are generating the values, you'll keep on getting them. So let's say a Fibonacci. If you don't know the nth number in Fibonacci, you can calculate the nth number by going to the first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth number, and then you are basically generating the sequence. So this is a feature of Python that you can use. It's called the generator. The next is defining a gray image function. What it does is, given an image, 1 second. So given an image, I'm applying a series of transformations so that my image becomes grayscale. Next is get faces. So this function, the only job of this function is to run a model on that image, and I'm returning the output of the model. Then get ROIs, region of interest. So given a face, I'm cutting out the background and I'm only focusing on the face. The next is get eyes. So what this does is, given the region of interest, which I get from this function above, I'm running a model which will give me the eyes. Similarly, I define a function which will run the model which will give me the smiles. And then in the end, I write the program, which is just a combination of all the functions which I've written above. Compare this program to this one. In this one, they just write a while loop, then they apply the series of transformations here, then they run the model over here, and then there's a for loop, and then they run the two models of eyes and smiles inside. So this code is very, it works, but if you want to add a new feature, let's say you want to detect the ears, then you cannot, at first glance, you don't know where to add that feature. Okay, compare that to the program which I showed you earlier. If I want to add a feature where I can get the ears, then I just add it over here after the eyes. So you can see that when you write it in a function, when you divide your code into multiple functions, then you can easily add new features and you can easily debug where my logic is going wrong. If you want to read this code for yourself, then I've sent you a link on the WhatsApp group. You can read it and maybe run it yourself. And if you're a JavaScript developer, if you're learning JavaScript for front-end in Unicode or anything, then you can use React the reuse reducer. I won't explain it what it is, but you can use it later. And you can also use this library called Lodash. So Lodash is a library where you have a lot of functions built into it, and you can just use these functions. You can compose these functions to make a bigger program. This will easily reduce your logic. It will reduce your workload and it will make the code more readable. So the entire advantage of using functional programming rather than just writing a bunch of statements is firstly, it is unit testable. What I mean by unit testable is, I guess most of you have not worked with testing in projects, but given a function, let's say summation, I want to check if the input and the output are correct. I want to check if the logic is correct. I want to check if the output ka value is correct. So you're testing each and everything by defining test cases. For example, 1, 2, 3. If the summation function returns 10, then that is wrong. If the summation function returns 6, then that is correct. So you write tests to automatically verify that your function is actually working or not. Parallelizable means, let's say you have a 100 GB ka data set. You want to run, let's say you want to grayscale each and every image. It will take maybe 1 week or 2 weeks to run on your laptop. Instead, what you can do is you can distribute the data between hundreds of PCs, and then you can write a code which will, you can write a function which will run on those 100 PCs. That is what I mean by parallelization, where given the piece of code, you are distributing the work to multiple PCs or multiple computers or multiple processors. When you write it with global state or side effects, then it is very difficult to make a code parallelizable. Easy to debug. If I write a code and I give it to my friend to debug, then he won't be able to if I write it in object-oriented or function or structural programming approach. Because I have to explain it to him कि मेरा code क्या करता है. Instead, if you write your code in functions, then it is easy for them to understand कि ये function क्या कर रहा है, ये function क्या कर रहा है. It is also easy to document. So, because the code is divided into multiple small units, we can easily just write documentation for each and every function separately. Easy to split the work. So coming back to the same example, so there are these two functions which detect the face. There is two functions which detect the smile and the eyes. If you're working in a team, you can just easily distribute कि ये बंदा face detection का बनाएगा, ये बंदा smile detection बनाएगा, ये बंदा eyes detection बनाएगा. Each and every one of you will write 3 different functions, and then you can just write a main program which will use these 3 functions. It is easy to modify and extend. So, like I said, if you want to add a new feature, for example, ear detection, you can just write the 2 functions for ear detection and then include those functions in the main function. Easy to reuse. So let's say this PyTorch example, the layers that you have written over here can be used in multiple models. Or let's say, in this example, the even function or an odd function, the function which tells you whether a number is even or odd, you can reuse this in multiple codes. It's completely fine. And lastly, it is much simpler in OOP. Like, I would rather just write a bunch of functions rather than messing up with my classes or something. There are a few problems with functional programming. Mainly, you are writing a little bit more, but the advantage is that you can reuse the code that you have written compared to some other approaches. And maybe you don't know how to split your program, or maybe you don't know how to split your algorithm. So for that, you need to practice. So that comes from practice. And in the end, the functional programming approach, which I've told you about so far, the main reasons why I'm telling you this is, firstly, it helps in maintaining large projects. So let's say you're in the company, if you want to work on a project, then that project will probably last for 2 or 3 years. And even after 2 and 3 years, you should be able to go back and add features to that project. So that is what I mean by maintaining large projects. So the seniors at the company will like it. The seniors don't have time to maybe read the code, or they don't have time to call you and ask you to explain the code. If your code is well maintained, if your code is well divided into functions, then it is easier for them to explain, and it is easier for them to give it to somebody else. There are the few technologies like AWS Lambda, Hadoop, Spark, PyTorch, TensorFlow, OpenCV. All of these would not have been possible without functional programming. And it helps you write logic faster. So like I said, face, smiles, eyes. I can just divide these into 3 functions, and then I can write a program by mixing and matching these 3 functions. Maybe I want to do face detection first. Maybe I want to do smile detection first. So you just write the small logic first, and then you can combine it to make larger programs. And it is also definitely helpful in competitive coding. I received some questions about competitive coding in the sheet. If you, let's say, you're in a team of 3 people, one person can write the input, one person can write the output, one person can write the logic solving. This is the logic for solving a problem. So you can easily divide the code. And if, let's say, the input is a string, I convert it into a list of integers. The person who wants to manipulate the list of integers can just convert it from list of integers to integer. And the person who wants to output the code can convert the code from the integer to a string. So, this is called a pipeline. This way of writing is called a pipeline. And even this, given an input, you get a modified input, you get another modified input, you get another modified input, and then you finally get the output. So these are the pros and cons of functional programming, and this is the basics of functional programming. So far, whatever I have explained is definitely useful in the projects that you will maybe code, the mini projects or the internship projects or the Unicode projects. But what I have not touched so far is that Python, JavaScript, and Java are not functional languages. So because Python will still allow you to declare variables outside, JavaScript will still allow you to insert printf statements or console.logs inside the logic. There are languages which restrict all of this, and the next section of this talk will be about those few languages. So if anybody has any doubt, you can just put it in the chat box. Okay. I'm just drink some water. The next thing that I want to tell you is pure functional programming. Now, this is where the experimenting part of this talk will come into. Many of you will probably not research much about this because Python में map है, filter है, reduce है, वो use करके तुम लोग कर सकते हो. But there's a whole field of research which is going on in terms of this approach. It's called lambda calculus. It's related to mathematics. It's related to calculus, but it has definitely influenced programming as well. It came way before object-oriented programming. So even before object-oriented, there was lambda calculus and there were functions and everything. And the reason that is not talked about maybe in a college or anywhere else is because it is difficult to learn. We as first year, second year, third year, and fourth years in Mumbai University don't get much of scientific exposure. So what we have to do is we have to Google all of these assets. The same can be said about all the employees which get jobs and they just use Java or Python. They don't research as much. So the pure functional programming is not used in industry as much as I wanted to. That's what I wanted to say. So a few concepts of pure functional is the first concept is the same. A function is a box. It takes an input, it gives an output, and there's no hidden state or global state. There are no global variables at all. Now, pure functions have no side effects. They can be easily parallelized and they can be lazy evaluated. What I mean by lazy evaluated is, let's say I have a Python. I create a range of 10,000 numbers. Okay. So creating a range of 10,000 numbers is a very tedious job. Like my processor will take at least 1 minute to get the range of 10,000 or maybe 1 lakh numbers. And let's say if I have a function which does f is equals to lambda x, it multiplies each and every element in that range by 2. Now, when I apply this function using map, you see that it takes no time to give me an output. This is because I'm actually not evaluating the entire range of 10,000 functions, the entire range of 10,000 elements. What this does is it gives you a map object, and then whenever you need the value, only then it will calculate the value for each and every element. Okay, so lazy evaluation is helpful for big data analysis, and that is the very basis of Spark and Hadoop. There are a few mathematical concepts which are related to pure functional programming, which is very difficult for us laymen like us developers to grasp, which is function compositions, monads, monoids, and applicators and functors. If you want to research about it, you can contact me later. I won't be explaining these in this talk. What I want to focus is on, there are no for loops, there are no if statements, there are no variables, there are no assignments. You cannot use for loops, you cannot use any of these features. And you might be thinking, how will you write a program without all of these features? I will explain it to you later. But the gist of it is that, 1 second. Instead of for loops, instead of looping, you use recursion. Instead of if statements, you use filters. Instead of assignments, you cannot change a variable. So let's say you have a data, let's say x is equal to 5. Then x will forever remain 5. You can maybe make a new variable, you can maybe make a new array, you can maybe make a new data structure, but you cannot change an old data structure. Once created, it is fixed. With that concept is called immutable data. And then strict typing. So in Python, you don't define data types, unlike Java or C and C++. But if you want to define कि मेरा function integer लेता है, मेरा function string data है, so the input and output have to be defined using data types. So you can, definitely Python is not the functional language because it has dynamic typing. And you need a clear definition of what the function takes as input and what the function gives as output. A good thing about this system is that there are a few new concepts which can be introduced. For example, algebraic data types. So let's say I explained in this example. 1 second. So usually you define a node or a structure in C. Instead, what I can do in Haskell is data type of 3 is equals to a node of a 3, an integer, and another 3. So this is what I call algebraic data types. I can just add a new data type, or I can subtract a new data type, and the number of things in my data type are fixed. So it is algebra, but for data types. And it's a very different concept, unrelated to functional programming, but it is often found in functional languages. So you might be thinking, how the hell would you write the code? If you have no if statements, if you have no for loops, then you need to get a new approach of solving problems. So instead of for loops, you have to use recursion. Instead of manipulating a data structure and manipulating a list, manipulating a counter, you need to use recursion. You need to use state. You need to use parameters. You need to use arguments in functions. And once you learn all of this, there's actually a good return of investment. I'll explain this return of investment in the end. To give you an example of what I mean, I have actually written the code down, so you can refer to it later. Yeah. So this is a basic example of what I mean. This is a program for Tower of Hanoi. So in C, you might have written Tower of Hanoi using recursion. This is the same program in Haskell. So this language is called Haskell. It is a purely functional language. It has, like I said, it has no variables or for loops. You only write functions in this. Now, Hanoi is a function which takes an integer. It takes a peg is just a string, a peg is just a string, a peg is just a string. So this is a function of 4 arguments, and it returns an array of moves. So this is what I mean by algebraic data type. Okay, if you don't understand this code, it's completely fine. What I want to highlight is this syntax. So instead of writing for loops and while loops, you have this thing called pattern matching. So given a few base conditions, you might have read about this in recursion. Given a few base conditions like n is equals to 1, n is less than equal to 0, you define the output. And if there's no base condition which is satisfied, you directly write the logic for solving for that input. So this is the exact definition of what I meant by functional programming. Given an input, you want to define the outputs. So here, this is the input and this is the output. This is the input and this is the output. Another example is quicksort. So I don't know if data structures के इसमें किया है quicksort. It's a very big code and Viva में पूछते ही है. And you have this partition function and this quicksort function is very difficult. This is quicksort written in Haskell. 3 lines of code compared to maybe 20 lines of code above. You have a base condition. अगर मेरा array empty है तो I just returning the empty array. Okay. And the other condition, which is not when the base condition is not satisfied, the other condition is given a head and all the other values. I'm calling quicksort on the values which are less than the first element plus the first element plus the quicksort on the values which are greater than the first element. So you can see that using functional programming, you can actually divide your logic. इतना बड़ा जो code था quicksort का, I can actually divide it into 3 lines of code by defining the base condition and the logic for any other input which the function can receive. Here's another example, a very typical example of Fibonacci. Fibonacci is a function. So this operator means it is a function which takes an integer and then it returns an integer. So Fibonacci of n is defined as if n is less than equal to 0. So this is what I mean when n is less than equal to 0 as a base condition. Return 1. When n is equal to 1, return 1. Otherwise, I call Fibonacci on n minus 1 and n minus 2. So you can see it is much simpler to write all of this without if, else, and for loop. And here's another example. This function is a replication function. Given a string ABC and an integer 3, I want to repeat each and every element in ABC 3 times. Okay, so here's the data type definition, the input and the output. So A is an array of A is an input, integer, and array of A is an output. And this is a very simple definition. What I'm doing is I'm replicating n times and concat map. When I talked about map in Python, map is a function which executes a function on each and every element. So I'm running a replication program, a replication function on each and every element of access. That is each and every element of my input list. Similarly, this is what I mean by a little bit of complex mathematics which can come in. You don't need to know about this, but this is called a monad. So what this means is, given the list, this operator means for each and every element in the list, replicate it n times. So even without for loops, even without while loops, even without counters, you can actually write program, you can write logic. And when you actually learn such a language, your way of approaching problems is very much modified. You approach problems in a very different way, which is why I recommend people to learn functional programming, specifically functional programming languages, but it is actually very difficult to learn. So it is actually very difficult to learn. So what you can do is you can practice functional programming in your projects using Python and JavaScript. You don't need to learn Haskell. You don't need to learn any new language. You can just practice map, filter, and reduce. In Python, there are iter tools and font tools which you can use. So there are packages built into Python which you can use. And a few applications which I wanted to give for pure functional programming. One is research. You can talk to me about it later. There is a subject called Theory of Computer Science in semester 5, that's 3rd year, which is kind of related to functional programming. It is mostly used in compilers. It is used in complex logic like cryptography, and is used in mathematics. It is used in static analysis. What we mean by static analysis is, given a program, I can prove that the program will always give you the correct output without running the program. So if you have, let's say, 10,000 lines of a very big project, I can just prove that your project will definitely work without actually running the project. So this is the very best example of why functional programming is effective. And a few projects are actually built on functional programming. WhatsApp is the best example. It is built on Erlang and Elixir, which are two languages very popular in web development and startups. You don't need to learn them. You can just, if you want to go through them, you can go through them later. And Scala is used by Twitter, Clojure, and there are a few languages which I have mentioned. The reason why WhatsApp uses functional programming is because they don't want their backend to crash. They don't want their servers to crash. So that is why they use functional programming, because you can easily parallelize each and every program, each and every function in your code base. And that is how WhatsApp can handle 2 to 3 billion users at one time. So that's all for this talk. The main takeaways was functional programming in Python and JavaScript. You can keep practicing, and if you want to learn something else, you can definitely contact me for resources. One of them for Haskell is CIS 194 course. If you want to go through it, you can go through it later. And if you want to learn it for the industry, for internships, then Scala is the best language because it's based on Java, and people in the enterprise use Java a lot. So that's it for this talk. I hope you like the experiments which I have done, and I hope you experiment on your own as well. If you have any questions, you can ask me right now.